Should reach topic number one tonight. Is the Caribbean too dependent on tourism? Like I said, you guys know my take on that already. But this came with a link, of course, that takes us to X, formerly known as Twitter. AJ Plus tweets out, you know who can't access Jamaica's white sand beaches? Jamaica. This came with a 2.5 minute video. I'll play it twice if necessary. If not, I'll just play it once. But let's check it out, then we'll talk about it.
You know who can't access Jamaica's white sand beaches? Jamaicans. According to a local advocacy group's calculations, less than 1% of Jamaica's coastline is accessible to the public.
Jamaicans have nowhere for themselves. We are living in between waters and we have no access to a beach.
Noors Arscott has been fishing at his local beach for most of his life. But a company bought the land in front of the beach and built a cement wall around the property. The plan? To build another resort.
Me, personally, have no access to another beach. So we had no choice than to go where they push us. Me been occupying that beach for 70 years. Those beaches was like our playground.
There are approximately 74 public beaches on the island, but many of them are in disrepair, charge daily use fees, or are difficult to access without a vehicle. So now, Norris has to bike 10 kilometers every morning along a busy highway to get to the closest beach where he can fish.
I earn more money if I was fishing here. But what happened, I had to be going and coming to and from St. Lawrence Bay to here to make $1. It's a far, journey to do from here at 70 years of age. They are pushing us back. This colonial system is coming right back at us.
He sometimes only makes around $25 selling fish. In comparison, the 2 all-inclusive resorts nearby can cost hundreds of dollars per person per night. Damien Combs lives down the road from Norris. He says his neighbors are also suffering from the lack of income after the beach closure.
So we're looking here at jet skis which have been parked, so to speak. Some of them are broken, some of them have damaged engines. They would sell rides to tourists or sell rides to locals. Jet skis put food on the table.
The Caribbean is the most tourism-dependent region in the world. But according to the UN, approximately 80% of all tourism dollars spent in the Caribbean end up leaving the region.
The thing that the government will tell you, and these hotels, that they create jobs. They create jobs, but what kind of jobs? So you're actually working in a hotel, which you will never ever be able to afford. You have all your independent people that did their own independent work and created their jobs that have lost those jobs. The people that sell t-shirts, they're the fisher folk. Beach closing basically canceled all those jobs.
Yeah, I think I'll just play it the one time. I think everyone could pick up on it. Yana B said, wow. Yana B, that's your hometown, right? Anthony McPhail. You know, I think I saw Anthony McPhail on The 4Kast the other day. I have forgotten who Anthony McPhail was. Peace to you. Peace and blessings to the panel in the chat. He says, Ketter's out there. He says, peace, family. RBG, Real Black Gentleman, says, greetings and graces, peoples. Appreciate all of you for tuning in tonight. All right. So I guess Buana and I have a little idea what's going on here. Buana, what say you to what you just saw?
Koku, the issue is nuance, okay? Because you know it as well as I do that nothing happens in the Caribbean without the approval of the Caribbean governments that are in place and also the people. It ain't just the so-called white man coming in and buying property and land and excluding the local population from enjoying the beaches, the public beaches that exist. It's also the people and the governments who these people put in place and empower as well. Okay, and know what I mean by that. You know, no private industry, no foreign entity or element can ever come into a so-called independent country and start doing things without the agreement of the government. The government has to sign off on the contract. The government, if there is a contract that suggests that we would like this exclusive plot of land and a right to use this plot of land exclusively, and they sign, and a government official, whether it be prime minister or politician, signs off on that, that means that he is given these foreign elements and entities the right to exclusively use this property. And you see the older people talking, you see them talking with this outrage, what I consider to be selective outrage. These are the same people who would put these kinds of men in power electoral year after year after year. So now everybody upset now when these colonial governments do what they do and what they've been doing. Everybody's upset. But these are the same elderly people who will swear and die off of some of these politicians. They'll swear for and die for these guys. They'll continuously put them in office, and they're gonna do what they continually been doing. That's one side of it. Another thing too is Jamaica, Cuba, to some extent the Bahamas and a lot of these Caribbean countries. When people get upset enough, they will lash out and protest against their government. Where's the outcry? They tried to do the same thing in the Bahamas, where you had exclusive use of some hotels, exclusive use for some private hotels, where they were prohibiting the Bahamian public from using certain property. What did the people do? The people protested it. The people came out and drove and protested it. In fact, the one of the prime ministers at the time, who wasn't in office, was at the center of protesting, prohibiting the local use of these private beaches and entities. And then when he got in office, he continued the same practice. So it just becomes like a ridiculous back and forth kind of thing. But I believe that when people get angry enough, they'll stop certain things from happening within their country. If the people come together and say enough is enough, then certain things will stop happening in their country. It's just as simple as that. But if you go for the so-called proverbial buy, if you go for the little shortfalls, the little television that a politician gonna buy you, some marijuana, some Kentucky Fried Chicken, some woman, some prostitutes, if you willing to go for that, then they're gonna continue to do the things that colonial governments do, and you will continue to have no say in your own country. As far as being dependent on tourism, that's an arguable comment, because I think that a lot of these colonial territories are what I consider the type of tourism that is currently practiced in the Caribbean is a plantation economy, plantation style economy. And I think that that type of tourism we need to break away from, and we need to have a different kind of tourism. Whereas the tourism have to be localized. You know, the local people have to be in charge of the tourism from top to bottom. It can't be an outside entity coming in trying to impose this idea of what Jamaica is supposed to be, this man-ism, or what the Bahamas is, with the girl with the nice flower in her hair and shit like that. Not most Bahamian women don't have flowers in their hair. You know, come on. I think that the local population, if we was to define the tourism or define the relationship of how that tourism is structured, I think that I could agree with that kind of tourism, because it's an industry. It's an undeniable economic powerhouse to some Caribbean islands. But you have other things that exist in the Caribbean, like Jamaica has their marijuana industry, which is a huge industry. They have aluminum. They have bauxite. We have bananas. We have the agricultural industry. We have fishing and things like that. I think that there are other industries we could focus on, but I think that tourism shouldn't be discounted because it's $1 billion industry. As is practiced in the Caribbean, I think that we need to get away from that plantation style economy in terms of how we practice tourism currently. But that's what I would say to this particular point.
You know, Bwana, I agree with you. Of course, I agree with the things that you're saying, because we come from this type of calamity that we're watching on the screen. And I remember that hotel thing, which is wild, because that hotel is right in the heart of where, you know, tourism and stuff happens in Nassau, and you couldn't go to that beach at all because of that hotel. But I'll say this, you know, to answer the prompt, the Caribbean too dependent on tourism? I would say absolutely. I think the problem is the people, as Buana and others in the chat, and I'll be reading your comments in a second. The people get caught up. I think Ketter said it really well, actually. Let me see if I can find that. He said the Caribbean is still a huge colony. Our populations are plagued with ignorance, superstition, political tribalism based on religion. And that's the part I was going to talk about. The problem with a lot of these folks is once these PMs and MPs of the areas come through and start talking that Christianity stuff, all y'all fellas out there, and men and women and children, will be out there rallying and chanting behind this MP, looking to get your votes to represent that area that they don't even care about, right? To vote in the PM, the prime minister, who don't even check for y'all in terms of their policies and whatnot. And then y'all going to want to come and complain. And that's my problem. You see, if you had the right leadership in there, first, let's go back for a second before the right leadership. To define the right leadership, if y'all let some of the youth who go away and get a wider worldview perspective and etc., come back with the ideas to really make change. If y'all allow some of them folks to come in, things could be better. But y'all don't. In fact, a lot of the youth, the Caribbean is one of the highest places for brain drain. A lot of people don't return because what you going back and do, right? Is the old heads, them man and them who was around since the country's got independence, who's still kicking around inside these governments, making these little deals into perpetuity. That's where I first learned that term. Well, one of these perpetuity, Buana. That's why I learned that word. It's from home. Them man and them could buy property forever and have that property forever, and you can't touch that beach or nothing. You know what I mean? But to touch on the folks here, I agree with what y'all saying about the people, but I'll say this though, in fairness, I don't think the average person would think that way. I don't think the average person would think, I need to buy this beach. You know? I need to buy this beach because the government may come and sell out the beach and they put a wall around this beach and I can't access this beach though. I think we got to be a little bit fair to the people in that I don't think the average person, especially in years long ago, I don't think the average person would think about that kind of thing. Now that we have the examples of it, I think people need to get on the ball and start protecting these things. But I don't think that's what people used to think back in the day. In fact, we know this is true of African folks in general. We didn't think about land ownership as heavy as these other folks did. So I'll give them a little bit of grace on that. This man who's talking about that beach was their playground and stuff, this man never thought the Jamaican government will sell this land or what have you to inconvenience himself and the people. I can't see that they would have thought otherwise, if I'm being honest. Being a person from the Caribbean, I don't think they would have necessarily thought otherwise. The grassroots people ain't gonna think otherwise. But the last thing I'll say, Buana, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish. I want you to finish first.
Yeah, the last thing I'll talk about, what Buana mentioned, was the plantation tourism. That's a huge problem. That's always been a problem. I told you all a story. I had an uncle in his youth in Nassau. They used to get little black fellas and stuff to walk behind these white women with their shopping bags, and my uncle was doing it to make some money. And one of his friends saw him and told him, hey, don't do that. That ain't looking good. Don't do that, man. Walking behind a white woman carrying her bags and all like that. Don't do that. So yeah, we got to get off of that. I will say, I also think this is where the old heads in government and stuff are messing up. Take the money from tourism and invest it back into the country. Invest it in the agriculture. If you're Jamaica, where bauxite is invested into bauxite, so y'all could be making your version of Reynolds Wrap instead of Reynolds Wrap owning your bauxite, right? But this is not what's happening, and I think you have a chance to change this if you could get the younger folks like Buana and them who went off and saw the world and saw how some things go and have some understanding. to come back to the country and take those positions that will forward the country. I think that's what you have to do. Bonnie, you want to add something, and then I'll introduce.
For me personally, Koku, that time has passed. You know, with this information age, I believe in the whole idea of borderlessisms. The time in terms of being nationalistic in these little small little colonial islands, former colonial islands, I am way past that. I am way past 21/7. I believe in being a global citizen of the world and going where I need to go get it. Granted, the Bahamas could be my home base. I have no problem with it. But the mentality is so embedded into the minds of people. It's very difficult for these people to break free of it. What is break my heart, Koku? People, there are brilliant young people in the Caribbean. I'm talking about A-class brilliance, and I've seen it over and over again. And when they reach a certain age, the story is so familiar. They go to a place that is able to appreciate their talents and their gifts, things that they can bring to the table. And unfortunately, the Bahamas and places like the Bahamas could be the Monaco of the Black world. They could be the Switzerland. You know, you have a small segment of European countries, Norway, Switzerland. They do things in a particular way that is beneficial to their little white little enclaves. The Caribbean can do the same kinds of things. And if you claim that you are independent countries, why do you have to continue to go and formulate your practices and your cultures with the so-called former colonial mother countries? Why don't you break away from that and find and create something that is distinctly unique, something that is workable, something that is far different? This is what Lee Kuan Yew them do. You know what I mean? It's like, why do we have to continue to follow the former colonial countries? Because these things are going to eventually end us into a cul-de-sac. Why do we go that way? But I feel if leadership is going to continually do that, some of the leadership, not all, because this is why I have my eyes on Mia Motley in Barbados. But if these guys are going to continue in this form and fashion, then the young people are going to look at that and say, man, this is a no-way situation for me. I can't think along the lines of these restricted policies of plantation politics. Fuck that. I mean, I live in a world and I can think as a global citizen, just like all these other little multi-billionaires running around the world. I am not a second-class citizen in this world. I'm gonna be a first-class citizen in this world. And a lot of young Black intelligent people have gotten that, and they say, well, we live here, this is our home base, but we could go anywhere in the world and operate. You know, so I'll leave it there because this is another kind of discussion. So I'll leave it there.
I feel you 100%, Bon. I feel you 100%. In the chat, Keto said the Caribbean has a small educated elite. Most of our leaders were educated in Western institutions, coming back to oppress us. Absolutely. Daily affirmation by Pauline, also from the hometown. She says most people want the beach to be public. I don't believe anyone thought this would occur. Yeah, I don't. If I'm being honest, going back in my thoughts growing up, ain't no one was thinking about no Sanders Beach would have been sold and all, and that. Nah, no one was really thinking that. You know, Trigger Happy 262 Plus says they probably don't have the money either. That's another thing. It will take obviously organization and political parties to get ownership and political ownership for the people. Yana B disagrees. She says, nah, the average person, if you're a fisherman, then you do what you need to do. That's business, how you make your money. Yeah, again, to buy a beach is no simple feat. I get the sentiment, but it's no simple feat. Keter also says we need to start a grassroots organization, but most of the population is politically uneducated. Trigger Happy says, yep, investment implies some sort of orientation or ideology. Their ideology is oriented to the West. Lastly, Keter says the money from tourism leaves the region because the hotels don't belong to the state or country. And that's a great point as well. Let's welcome our boy Black Steel this week. Black Steel, how are you? Black Steel, are you hearing me? All right, let's welcome in our other boy, Real Black Gentleman.
Oh, what's up?
Good.
Is there a echo? Are you hearing an echo, or does it sound good?
There was, but it's good. Go ahead.
Okay. I guess with the Caribbean, I guess it kind of goes back to I mean a sense of organization. I mean the Caribbean is naturally diverse in a way that is not necessarily it doesn't necessarily benefit, Black people or necessarily anyone necessarily in the Caribbean as it stands because of the latent colonialism and the various entrenched powers that are in there keep everything separated. The answer to the question, is it too dependent on tourism? I don't know. I mean, I don't think it really has a chance. Yes, it definitely is. Who did was it Juana who said, the Caribbean needs to have some kind of financial capital, some kind of like investment, zone. That would be great. And I think that in all reality, it would be in its central location, at least in the Western Hemisphere, it would be the ideal place to do those things. What the problem is, the people who are already kind of in place to do that, who are the heavy investors, going back to the other week with the Epstein, the rich white folks in the internet doing all that. That's investing. The problem is, it's like we don't. I mean, it's difficult as a Black man in America to look at the Caribbean and know how to really go in there. I mean, if Black people, I mean, heaven forbid, but I mean, just feel me out. The way that, Black Americans went up in Liberia and basically took it over, to the angst of the people there. I mean, I don't want to say take over, but look at the Caribbean as a kind of, to invest and to build up stuff, to have capital, to be the financiers. I mean, relatively, if you have $1 million, liquid that you are able to invest, proper investments, that $1 million could bubble up, within a relatively short time span, within 10 years, 20 years, that $1 million could easily become 10 million in a strong business. And a fair amount of people have $1 million. I mean, not, a fair amount, not, not hundreds of millions of people, not tens of, what I'm saying? 100,000 people have $1 million liquid. 100,000 Black people have $1 million liquid. It's just a matter of, getting them to not see, oh, let's go to the Bahamas and play on the sand. No, let's go to the Bahamas and set up this network that's going to connect with, what I'm saying? Things, there are always opportunities, but then once again, you do have people's, who are nationals in their own regions who would then reject that kind of, or try to exploit it, or try to take the investment and then try to, just commandeer the money. And then what will they do with the money? Spend it in France, spend it in London, spend it in Milan. You know what I'm saying? It's it's very difficult about, how do you, get there from here? How do you coalesce at least each various, nation, and to try to invest and to draw I mean, clearly, if Haiti, I don't know how Kenya found itself in Haiti. I mean, I got to give them major props for that. Although I would expect someone like Ghana would have done that first, being a little bit closer. Because I mean, the gas and the fuel to move a lot of people from Kenya to Haiti can't be cheap. You know what I'm saying? Every 1,000 miles you could cut off, if you could send some Africans from, the West Coast instead of the East Coast. But, I got to give Kenya credit for, stepping up. I mean, that's a major move. That's similar to how Cuba, moved in and helped with the Namibians. You know what I'm saying? Free peoples down there. So I see that. You can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Naturally, everyone destabilizes the Haitian people. So at least Black people are there, and hopefully it's the Haitian people see them as neutral, disinterested relatively in the processes of the country, just to be neutral arbiters and peacekeepers, true peacekeepers to the best of their abilities. It really shouldn't. I mean, if as long as you have corrupt Black people who want to spend the people's money and basically give it to white folks, this will never fail. And as long as, once again, it goes back to the internal things of Black people not seeing other Black nations as like party stops, and actually like, how can I put my money here in a way that the money is a true investment, that money is fixed with a purpose for industry. I'm gonna pass the mic.
I appreciate that, RBG. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit skeptical of why Kenya, of all the African nations on the west, why Kenya from the east. I'm skeptical about that. Kenya says America's the only hegemon in the region. Kenya isn't stepping up. America is allowing this. He says no foreign forces could move about in the entire Western Hemisphere without the agreement of the U.S. and Kenya. Ruto and Kenya are shit, is what he says. Erzuli was in the chat. He said blacks are washed. They ain't investing in shit. Thanks to Erzuli. Lero is here as well. Erzuli is here. Black Steel is here. And with that said, let's hear from Black Steel. Black Steel, what say you?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to the chat. Glad to be here. Sorry I'm running a little late.
It's all right.
Black Steel.
Hey, how you doing? I know Razuli doesn't want to say Black Steel, but I got to keep my secret identity, man. Chill out. Anyways, to the prompt. So yeah, this is something I just posted. I wanted to ask a question because I don't live in the Caribbean, but I do understand how areas and neighborhoods get gentrified, right? So I see this as a larger theme of trying to displace African people. Sort of like what's going on with the Gullah Geechee in the Carolinas. A lot of their homes are getting bought up and turned into resorts, like for example in South Carolina and Georgia. But the area is kind of dependent on tourism because in a way it's forced to depend on tourism. It's industrial capacity has never really been developed because it benefits the U.S. hegemon to keep these countries dependent on them, to depend on foreign aid. And when we see they start to step out of line, you get a Cuba, you get a Haiti, you get a Grenada, you get a situation like that. So I think they're dependent on tourism, but only because they haven't really had opportunity to develop their industries the way they should have. I don't think that there's enough wealthy people. Like, I don't think this old man could ever accumulate enough wealth to buy, a beach, no matter how much fishing he did. So I think that those resources should be held for the people. Enough about private ownership. Why is it that these resources cannot be held in common for the people of this country? Since they live there, they're the ones who make the country livable. So I'll leave it there. Koku, thanks for having me, and I'll see you. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to answer Black Steel. What I would do in the Caribbean, it seems that the commercialized tourism that exists in the Caribbean islands, I would really try to get away from that. I know it's probably too far gone now, but I would try to see. Well, Airbnb has done something good for the Caribbean. Airbnb has made the classical tourists who would usually go to these all-inclusive hotels to come out of these places and have a localized experiences, because now you're renting out the local homes to stay in. So you have a sense of, you get to understand what the community is like. You get to understand what the community eats. You get to have a closer relationship outside of that so-called tourism kind of commercialized experience. You get a more localized interaction with the regular tourist. So you see them almost on a human level as opposed to a master servant level. So I think that Airbnb is a good feature in terms of what that has done for people entertaining foreign and guests in their own homes in places like that. Also, there is something like the marijuana industry. The marijuana industry is something I believe that is a serviceable industry to the so-called tourism economy. Why? Because many guests come here, they want an experience of leisure. Many of them, the first thing they ask you for is some dope. They'll ask the Jamaican, oh, show me where Bob Marley is. Let me get some of the good ganja? If the Jamaicans find themselves at the helm of that industry, I think that they would be able to galvanize more dollars more dollars in their economy as opposed to just tourism dollars. Now, some people will say, look at that and say, have a moral view. Say, well, you can't give the guests the guests been smoking drugs. They've been smoking drugs long before we got here. And in fact, in American states now, they are decriminalizing the usage of marijuana. So what goes for the United States or the Americas goes for the rest of the Caribbean. The good thing about it is now you have poor farmers who could benefit from that because you have millions of tourists coming to the Caribbean every year. They want to relax on the beach. Many of them want to smoke a good whatever. And now they have to pay for it. And the money, the dollars are being put back into these farmers' pockets. I don't think it's a bad thing. Some people have a moralistic view to it. I don't. You know, just like cigarette is a multi-billion-dollar industry, I think that the marijuana leaf could be also a multi-billion-dollar industry, not only for the purposes of leisure, but even on a medicinal level. You know, these kinds of things should be introduced to the regular. Listen, man, we could go on forever. I'll just cut it there. I'll cut it there and just.
Not just that, you could use it industrially. You could use it in hemp, in concrete, hempcrete, and construction materials and stuff like that too. So yeah, we need to get on that. By the way, we had Airbnb longer than America. We used to call it guest house back in the day. But yeah, Razuli them are talking about Kenya. Razuli says Kenya ain't shit. Yana B says we need to do better. Razuli says they didn't show up when the Dominicans was killing the Haitians, but want to show up now under false pretenses. Yana B agrees with Buena, legalize the herb. Keto says marijuana should be legalized and industrialized in the Caribbean. I agree. All good facts. All good points. Is there any other last points anyone here wants to make? And by the way, shout out to the 4Kast who's in the chat as well tonight. If I missed anyone, just drop a comment. I'll shout you out too. It seems like there's no last comments here, so let's go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 2 tonight. Shoot the Breeze topic number